Welcome to 1500ESPN.com. My name is Andrew Krammer. I want to thank you for joining me as we go over three keys for the Minnesota Vikings against the St. Louis Rams on Sunday at TCF Bank Stadium. And boy, did this game look a little bit easier for the Minnesota Vikings a month ago. The Rams are on the up and up. They're 4-3. They've got a strong defense, lean on a running game, and they've only gotten better over the last month because of Todd Gurley's emergence. The rookie running back out of Georgia who had torn his ACL in his final year of college has come back now, and even though Rams coach Jeff Fisher said he's not 100% yet, he's still running through NFL defenses. I believe he's the NFL leader in yards per carry based on qualified running backs. He's averaged 6 yards per. He's running through defenses again, and the Minnesota Vikings' improved run defense is going to be tested. That's one of our keys, but first let's start off with the first one, Teddy Bridgewater. With that Rams defensive line, this could be another long day for the Minnesota Vikings front. They had a great day in Chicago. They were able to open up lanes for Adrian Peterson. He didn't hit that home run against the Bears, but he was able to be more consistent, having more 6, 7, 8-yard runs instead of the -2, 1, 2 yards, 0, and then boom, 75. Now, the Vikings would rather have that consistency in the running game. They still want the home runs, but it's going to be tough to come by against a Rams front that's allowing just 3.7 yards per carry, which currently ranks as the fourth stingiest run defense in the NFL. Obviously, they can get after the quarterback as well. They're sacking him at an alarming rate. 26 sacks for the St. Louis Rams have been spread across 13 guys. 13. You can't put all those guys on the field at once. So that means they're bringing explosive guys off the bench. Obviously, they have Nick Fairley from the Detroit Lions. They signed him in free agency, and he's a backup. He's a former first-round pick coming off the bench for them. They got Michael Brockers, Aaron Donald, Robert Quinn, and even though Chris Long is out with a knee injury, they still got William Hayes coming off there, a fourth-round pick. They got plenty of guys to come after you in plenty of different ways. They bring different pressures. Greg Williams, the defensive coordinator in St. Louis there, was obviously the coordinator for the Saints defense when the Bounty Gate scandal came down, and everybody was mad about all that physicality and being paid for all that. Obviously, that was a bad situation, but his mentality still stays in that they like to bring the pain, they like to bring the different pressures from different angles. It is obviously different than what Mike Zimmer does with his defense, but the principles are still the same. They want to bring different pressures, confuse offensive lines, and for this Vikings front, they need to stay on point, and that means Teddy Bridgewater is probably going to have to take more of that load unless Adrian Peterson can find some consistent room. Now, don't get me wrong, they're going to ride Adrian Peterson just like they've had in all the other games, but in all those other games where Adrian struggled, Teddy has had to pick up the slack, and that's something that I expect Teddy to have to do on Sunday against this Rams defense. Now, Teddy Bridgewater is a guy who, even though his stats look the same from last year, he has made marked improvements, specifically during games, progressing through and being more comfortable. If you've noticed now, throughout all these games, most of his mistakes are being made in the first quarter, and then he's kind of dissecting defenses a little bit better in the second half because he's seeing tendencies. Now, that intellect of his and that football IQ, as they call it, is something that they liked with Teddy Bridgewater. He's still developing. He can still get fooled at times by certain coverages, as Mike Zimmer pointed out this week. But his fourth quarter accuracy is 70%. That's one of the tops in the NFL. I believe it ranks 9th in the NFL currently. And that 70% completion percentage in the fourth quarter is better than any of his other completion percentages on the other three quarters. He's clearly calmed down. He can handle things in crunch moments, and I expect this game to be a close one. It's probably going to come down to whoever can make that final throw or final big play on defense. So Teddy Bridgewater and that Stephon Diggs connection is going to have to be on point on Sunday, especially if that Rams front gives the running game a lot of problems. That brings us to our second point. If Teddy Bridgewater is going to have to put the game in his hands at some point, those extra blockers need to be there and be able to help that offensive front. TJ Lemmings, the rookie right tackle, is coming off one of his best games of his career, young career obviously, in Chicago, where he handled Pernell McPhee and whoever they threw at him. He had a great game there. It's going to get a lot tougher. Now, I'm not going to say it's as tough as that Denver game where they had to handle Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, but it's right up there. The St. Louis Rams, like I said, 26 sacks. That's the third most in the NFL. They know how to get after the quarterback and bring it from different angles. So the Vikings are going to probably lean on more of those extra protection sets. We're talking about Rhett Ellison, Kyle Rudolph lining up tight more often, Matt Asiata being in there on those longer third down protection downs. Those extra blockers are going to have to be key for what the Minnesota Vikings are trying to do in terms of keeping Teddy Bridgewater upright. They're going to have to be on the same page too, because opposing defenses have really looked to try and confuse this offensive line, which let's be honest, it's pretty average without John Sullivan kind of calling the shots in the middle. Joe Berger's done a good job in terms of just his physicality and blocking, but he's not the same in terms of pointing out the protections. I actually talked to an offensive lineman today who said we've actually been splitting the load a little bit more on those kind of protection calls, where whether it's Brandon Fusco, Mike Harris, Matt Khalil even calling some things out, because opposing defenses are looking to stunt, game, make switches, crosses, do all these different kinds of things to try and throw them off and get open lanes at the quarterback. And a lot of times it's worked, which is why teams are doing it. I expect the Rams to do the same thing, which means as our point two, that these extra blockers need to be key in helping out. They can't have any slip ups with a Kyle Rudolph or a Red Ellison not picking somebody up, because if they're taking away a route downfield, that means it's going to be that much more important for them to do their job in protection and keep Teddy upright. Number 3 for the Minnesota Vikings is going to be to stop that man, Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley's been running through the NFL through 4 games, only 4 starts. And who would have thought, honestly, that Todd Gurley and Stephon Diggs would be, maybe Gurley, but he was going into the year with an ACL injury, that these 2 guys would be early Offensive Rookie of the Year candidates, and that this game between the Vikings and Rams would have very early playoff implications, as the Vikings sit at number 6 in the NFC and the Rams sit at number 7 currently. Got a lot of football left to play, but point number 3 for the Minnesota Vikings is going to be to fit the run and stop Todd Gurley. Now, it's easier said than done, because no team he's started against so far has been able to do it. That includes the Green Bay Packers, who have had a much improved defense in this NFC North for the Minnesota Vikings to face down the road. To fit the run, they got to be able to have health, first of all. Right now, it might look like they have Sharif Floyd, Anthony Barr, and Eric Kendricks out for Sunday. That's not a sure thing yet. I don't expect Sharif to play. Barr and Kendricks have missed practice all week so far, and I'm saying this on this Thursday night. They could return on Friday and play Sunday. That's very plausible. But if they're without either of those guys, they're going to need somebody to step up, whether that's a 32-year-old Chad Greenway filling a more of a role, or even a Brandon Watts, should they be without both Barr and Kendricks. So they're going to need people to step up. They're going to have to fit those runs. And this run defense, too, has been much improved since that season opener. They've sprung a few leaks here and there. You saw some runs from Matt Forte for about 12, 14 yards. Obviously, that Ronnie Hillman run for a touchdown in Denver. But other than that, they've been one of the better NFL defenses when you take away a few of these home runs that they've given up. They can't afford to do that on Sunday, especially if the Vikings offense is going to continue to struggle to score points as they have, and it's not going to get any easier against that Rams defense. So, on defense for the Vikings, going to have to pressure Nick Foles, but it's really going to start with stopping Todd Gurley and fitting that run, sealing the edges, and getting better play from your linebackers should you be down your stars in Barr and Kendricks. So, to recap, we've got Teddy Bridgewater. The game might go more into his hands. Ideally, it doesn't if you're the Vikings, but if it does, number 2, keeping him upright is going to be key with those extra blockers. And then number 3, stop Todd Gurley. Now, we didn't mention, obviously, Blair Walsh, who we should, that he is back on track. He's looking good so far, made 13 straight field goals, including 5, I believe, a couple games ago, and then 3 in Chicago. So that's 8 straight for him in the past 2 games. This is going to be a close one, I think. Maybe it comes down to who scores on defense or who makes the most field goals. So that's going to be a paramount for the Minnesota Vikings. I want to thank you guys for joining me here at 1500ESPN.com. Again, my name is Andrew Krammer. Please check back to the website for more.